Great evening. Coach McKnight is here, and welcome to the Revitalize the Total Woman podcast. This is a podcast which is a media outlet that's connected to a nonprofit based in Chesapeake, Virginia, entitled Women of Elevation Career Services International. Its legal business name is Kingdom Expansion Enterprises Incorporated. And so the mission of the podcast, as well as the organization itself, is to empower women with the tools to be able to create, relate, and elevate. And so with the focus areas of create, relate, and elevate, these are the three focus areas that the organization and podcast centralizes on and really creates its content on. So, for example, the first 4 months of this year, the podcast content that we shared focused in on helping you to create products or services and just create the lifestyle that you desire as a female. But the next 4 months, which of course started in May and now is continuing into June, July, and August, we're focusing in on helping you to become or have healthier relationships. This is personal as well as professional relationships. And so we started in May where we started talking about dating, right? We started talking about many different elements of dating. Tonight we're going to be transitioning into talking about moving in the direction of a serious type of relationship that may lead to marriage. I know some of you are probably like, oh my gosh, marriage, Lakeisha. No, for some of you, you might not have a desire to be married, and it's totally okay. But there are quite a few people who desire to be married. And so I strongly encourage you to connect with this podcast and share, of course, this podcast and the details of the podcast with other women that you know who have a desire to be married. Because the content that we're going to be sharing over the next couple of weeks, especially during the month of June, will help them in that area. So be sure to share. And if you want to learn more about the podcast as well as the nonprofit, I definitely encourage you to visit our website, which is www.womenofelevation.com. I know one question that some people may have is this podcast only for women? Well, we do invite men to listen to the podcast as well, because you can probably get an inside idea of some of the things that women face. And if you're married, this can help you to really fully get an understanding about women and about your wife. So, yeah. You definitely want to be connected if you want to learn more about your wife. Okay? So I appreciate each and every one of you listening in from all around the world. And from my last review, there are so many women around the world that are listening into this podcast. Women from the Republic of Korea, from Croatia. I mean, there's so many women from various places that tune into this podcast. And so thank you for being connected. I mean, there are so many other great things, other podcasts you could be tuning into, but you've decided to be connected to Revitalize the Total Woman podcast. And I thank you for that. I really, really do. Thank you so very much. So as you may have seen, based on the title of this podcast episode, you might see that I have a little bit of a trivia. Is there a difference between dating and courting? Dating versus courting. Now, I'm just going to give you my perspective. Now, of course, I am not by far the marriage expert, nor do I claim to be. But from my own experience, I've dated for some time, dated long distance for some time, and I've been married for a bit, over 10 years. So I can give you a little bit of my thoughts, okay? And of course, you can do your research, do your study, you can consult with other professionals as well. I do encourage you to do that. But here is what I think the difference is between dating and courting. You see, now, depending on how old you are, I don't know if you can recall, the moments where you want to go out, you see a male, and I'm talking to the ladies right now, you see a male and the male approaches you and wants to, find out your name, get your phone number, right? And, just wants to learn more about you. And it doesn't hurt, if you find that particular individual attractive, you say, okay, you'll go out and you'll do that, right? It either may be an occasion where you go out with that person one-on-one, or you may go out with that particular person in a group style. Okay, now is one better than the other? These are the type of questions that we're going to be gauging over the next couple of episodes. with this podcast. And we may even throw that out there, okay, on the timeline on Facebook. So if you're not connected to me on Facebook, you might want to do that so that you can join in the dialogue on the timeline. My Facebook URL is facebook.com/L McKnight Speaks. That's LMCKNIGHTSPEAKS. L McKnight Speaks. All right. So again, thinking about this whole concept of dating, it's when you're really you're having a good time, you're enjoying getting to know other people. And it may be the case where you're not necessarily just dating one person, but you might go out on a date with someone else. Because perhaps the person that you're dating or that you started going out with, you probably found some things that you might not have liked about that individual. Or you might not have shared many things in common. So you decide, okay, you might want to, of course, begin looking into dating or someone else. Okay. So when you think about dating, it's when you're really seeking to know people and develop relationships so that you can potentially find that go-to person, that person that you believe you would want to be with and have a committed relationship with. So that's what it means. Okay. You're searching, you're in seek mode. You're not tied down yet. Okay. Some people get this confused. They say, well, this is my girl. Well, if you're dating, technically you don't own the person. The person does not necessarily belong to you. And even when you're married, the person doesn't belong to you, right? In my opinion, of course, with this organization having its spiritual base to it and foundation, everyone belongs to God. Okay. But, when it comes to getting married, there is a different level of responsibility that the male will take on when marriage happens. But of course, that's another dialogue that's going to come along during other future episodes as we talk about relationships. But again, dating is kind of a casual thing. It's nothing serious. But here's where things begin to shift. You find that individual, you're like, okay, yeah. He definitely, I'm totally connected to him. We have a lot in common. I really am feeling that particular guy. And you begin to have that feeling. And it's like, that physical attraction is there. Really engaged socially. You share the same values and beliefs. And you really can see yourself going down the path of having a stronger, committed relationship with that individual. Well, that's when it can begin to shift into courting, because courting begins to happen when you begin to have that talk, that dialogue, and you'll realize it where your lives are slowly becoming one. And it's like that pre-unifying stage. And I remember that even with my husband and I, when we had that pre-unifying stage, even though we were long distance, because he was in Virginia and of course at one point not Oklahoma, and I was in New Jersey and at one point in Pennsylvania when I was in school. So this is pre-unifying stage where you're checking in with one another. It's like your worlds are slowly becoming one, even though you're not married yet, and that oneness is not sealed just yet. But you feel that connection, that oneness, that unifying moment that's beginning to develop. And that's what courting is. Courting is when you're becoming a bit more serious and you're really looking into the confines of marriage with that particular person. So that's the difference. We're going to talk about some more deeper topics, even beginning tomorrow. We'll talk about what courting looks like. We'll begin to talk about that on tomorrow as well. So I appreciate you listening in, of course, to the episode on tonight. Again, be sure to visit the website if you want to learn more about the podcast and this organization, Women of Elevation Career Services International. All right. The website is www.womenofelevation.com. Thank you so much, and I'll speak with you tomorrow at 8:00 p.m. Take care.